Hey there, Dango Stu here. Today's video is about finding a leak in a boat and is proudly sponsored by MarineEngine.com. So the boat in question today is the Mighty Green Machine. It's been taking on water for a while. The other day the battery went flat, so I think the bilge pump's been working overtime on the float switch, so it's time to sort that out. Now there's a few ways you can find leaks in a boat. One of the really common ways is just to fill the boat with water, see what's going on. The big downside to that is water weighs a lot. So if the hole is low in the boat, great, you can fill it with 10 centimetres of water, and if you find it, fantastic. If the leak is higher up, then I really don't recommend filling a boat to the gunnels, because like a cubic metre of water weighs a tonne, your trailer won't handle it, the hull won't handle it, so just be careful. Only ever really look for leaks low down if you're using water. Throat's a bit croaky today, actually a bit crook, so sorry about that. Depending on the style of the boat, you can also use air, the same way we do these vacuum and pressure tests in, say, outboard gearboxes. If it's got a second sort of watertight compartment, like maybe a small sailing dinghy, you can tape it up, pressurise it, and then just start spraying around looking for where that air is leaking out. Another good option is light. Go at night in dark space, have somebody on the inside with a torch, you can be on the outside and just look for pinholes. I actually did that ages ago before I primed the hull and painted and did the anti-foul and everything on the Green Machine, so I've got a little bit of footage of that. So as you can see, holes show up pretty clearly with light. Sometimes if the hole is sort of across, it's leaking around a double skin or something, you won't see light straight through. You might see a sort of reflected light, but light tends to be best for straight through pinholes. The next thing I'd say about finding leaks in a boat is you're always going to have a couple of prime candidates. You don't always have to inspect every inch of the hull unless you've had a hard grounding or something like that. And if you have, you'll probably spot it straight away. Obviously, if you're in the boat on the water and you see the water coming straight in, you know where it's coming from. So a good option really is to dry the boat completely, so really get it bone dry, launch it, and even with a couple of sets of eyes, just start looking around, see if you can find where it's coming in. Because the Green Machine lives in the water all the time, and the float switch on the bilge pump won't pick up that last couple of centimetres of water, the bilge always has water in it, which means I don't really get to see clearly where it's coming in unless I was to dry it and then relaunch it. That would be a good option for me, to dry it completely out, launch it, see if I can see where the water's coming in. But if I can't, then I've got to put it back on the trailer, bring it up here. So I'm going to try a few different techniques first. When it comes to leaks in a boat, there's always some prime suspects. Pretty much any time something goes through the hull. So there's the bung itself if it's leaking, then there's the actual fitting, the threaded part of the bung that may not be sealed into the hull properly as well. There's the bolts that go through the motor and mount it to the hull. Any other sort of outlet for a bilge pump, say, or maybe where a transducer is screwed on. Anytime there's something that goes through the hull, I'd be checking there first. You may as well look at those prime candidates, rule them out before you start looking for something a little bit harder to find, like a crack in the hull or a pinhole. Because this video is about finding a leak, not so much about repairing it, it applies across the board, whether it's a fiberglass boat, an aluminium boat, or a timber boat. What I'll do now is I'm going to fill the boat up to make it really clear that any drip I find is actually water that's come from inside the boat, as opposed to maybe moisture that's wicking out from the anti-foul, because the anti-foul has lifted in places and moisture does get trapped beneath it. So I'm going to put a litre of antifreeze coolant in the bilge just to dye the water. There's lots of things you can use. There's actually a few specialty sort of leak finding dyes, but we've got truckloads of this stuff here, so that's what I'm going to use. The other thing about coolant like this is, as well as being bright green, it's designed to go in aluminium radiators. It's actually designed to protect these metals, so I think it's quite good for this purpose. Can't say I'm particularly bilge proud, but this is what it looks like. So you can see there's always a couple of centimetres of water in here anyway. One of my prime suspects is actually the bung here. Not leaking where the bung itself goes in, but leaking where it's sealed around here. Last time I took this out, the casing actually rotated a bit. I put a bit more Sikaflex on it, but I don't have a huge amount of confidence in that. Having said that though, there is water up to the bottom of it, so we'll see. Alright, so coolant. Kind of suits the Green Machine, doesn't it? Alright, I'll let the hose run for a while. I'm not even going to fill it to the bottom of the bilge. I'm only going to fill it about this deep, just so I keep the weight down. This is a pretty strong trailer, but I'm not going to push my luck.
So you can see here the bilge isn't filled up very far at all, but it's now up over the bung. And then down here you can see this bung is quite dry. There's no water coming out of here at all. So obviously that Sikaflex I added on after it moved last time is doing its job. Under here though, there is a drip. And it's coming from up here. That looks like some sort of old patch. So I'm going to strip this antifoul off and have a look what's under there. This is what I was talking about before, where depending on how much prep you did, in some places the paint will bubble and that'll trap water underneath, but that'll be clear water, not green water. This antifoul's actually been on for a year now, so it's time to redo it anyway. There's a few other patches where that antifoul's been peeling off, but no other leaks.
Next thing to do is just drain all that water back out now before I start looking at that hole. I don't want to drip in the whole time. We've got a coolant disposal tub that I'll be putting it all in, but if you're just going to be dumping on your lawn or whatever, then make sure you use some sort of non-toxic dye. To be honest, this is actually dripping so fast, probably could have used just plain water. It would have been pretty obvious anyway. I just wound the trolley up to tip the boat up so that I can drain it out, which of course made it deep at the back, which of course made the auto bilge pump come on, which of course shot coolant all across the workshop. So turn your bilge pump off. Got my trusty wire brush and a paint scraper. I'll go and clean that section and see what we see.
Cleaning up this area, I can see it's an old patch that had been welded on, and from what I can see, this edge here is cracked. So what I'd really like to do is just weld along here again. Under that antifoul and primer is a welded patch, you can see, previously welded, wasn't one I put on. But you can see here that it looks like there's a little crack just on this left-hand side here. So I'm going to try and just run another bead of weld down here to seal it up.
Before I go and weld that up, I want to talk a little bit about riveted patches. I did a video on how to do these riveted patches a while ago, and I copped a fair bit of flack over it because I think people just sort of don't believe it works. I've got one on the Green Machine now, and it's not leaking at all. It's on the chine where it had worn really thin, and every attempt to weld it, even with low amp TIG welding, just melted, just made the hole bigger. And in the end I thought, right, do I weld an aluminium patch or do I just rivet one on and put some Sikaflex on? And I riveted it, and it's never leaked since. So I'll show you that.
So on the bottom chine here, this is the plate here, I put a bit of a bend in it. It's about 2 or 3 mil aluminium, and then it's just got 6 rivets holding it on, and then a whole bed of Sikaflex between it and the hull to seal around the hole. So the hole itself is probably, yay big, and the patch overlaps by at least 2 or 3 centimeters. And that's still just completely watertight. It just doesn't leak a drop anymore.
In that original video, I used rivets like this, which it's a blind rivet, which means it gets used from one side. I don't need to get to the back side to do it, but it's an open rivet. The mandrel pulls through like that. What is arguably better is another type of blind rivet, but it's a closed blind rivet, so the end here is completely sealed. So all rivets like this are called blind rivets because you don't need to get to both sides of the plate to seal them. You can do it from one side, there's a blind side. Both these rivets are blind rivets, i.e. you can do them from one side, there's a blind side. You don't need to get to both sides to peen a top on. But a closed rivet probably is a better choice for doing these patches. I did all of these using an open rivet. They don't leak anyway, but why not? So these patches are a really good way to fill a larger hole. You could try some brazing, you can try welding it. Obviously the one we've got here that's leaking again was welded. The one that was riveted isn't, although it is a newer patch. If you've got a really small pinhole, you can just weld it, a little bit of MIG, a little bit of TIG, whatever. It's good. If you don't have that equipment or that skill set, all you really need to do, if it's a pinhole, is drill it out to the size of the rivet, drop the rivet in some polyurethane sealer like Sikaflex, put it in the hole, close it up, that hole's not going to leak. In this case though, the crack I've got, it's not in a good place to put a patch on, it's not a pinhole, so I can't just put a rivet in, so I'm kind of going to have to weld it. When I sit at my bench with some nice little new bits of aluminium and practice, I think, I can do this. When I hang upside down under a boat that's 40 years old, I think, I can't do this to save my life. I'll show you what it looks like now if you promise not to laugh. So it isn't pretty, but I don't think it's going to leak. I managed to get reasonably good bonding between the hull and this patch that's now completely filled up, so as ugly as it is, I think it's going to be completely watertight and ready now to re-prime and re-antifoul over the top when I do the whole hull again. Of course, this may not be the only leak. You know, finding a leak's great, but I didn't fill the boat up that far, so there may be leaks higher up, but I'm pretty confident that's one of the major leaks anyway. So I'll put the boat back in the water, see how dry it stays. If it needs it, I'll sort of go through the process again. Now, I do know that I focus a lot on aluminium boats. It's what I own, obviously, and it's what's predominantly used in our area. These boats live in the water. They spend a lot of time sort of running up on beaches, against rocks, oysters, up against wharves. Conditions where fiberglass boats just don't fare very well. Having said that though, I do know a guy who does professional fiberglass boat repairs, so I'm going to try and get him in on a video at some stage so we can go through some fiberglass techniques as well. I think this leak's pretty much fixed now, so I'll wrap this video up here. I think the technique of putting water on a boat is a pretty good one, but just bear in mind water weighs a lot. You can damage the hull, you can damage the trailer if you put too much in. Alright, well take care and I'll catch you next week. See ya.